Welcome and good evening. We'll call the City of Raytown Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 15th, 2015 to order. This evening, we have a pretty involved agenda, so we'll get right into our meeting this evening. First up on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from February 12th, 2015. Do I have any revisions? Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Move, and do I have a second? All those in favor? Well, actually, do we have any additional board discussion? Mr. Lightfoot.
Yes, I was absent at the previous meeting, so I'll abstain from the vote.
Thank you. All those in favor of adopting the meeting minutes from February 12th, 2015? Aye. Any opposing? No. Motion passes. We have adopted the February 12th, 2015 meeting minutes. This evening we have there's no old business pending on our agenda, so we'll move right into new business. First up this evening is an application for a conditional use permit, application that seeks to allow residential use in a neighborhood commercial district at 5902 Blue Ridge Boulevard, Raytown, Missouri. Case number is PZ 2015-004, and the applicant is Wanda Mullins. At the onset of this application and all applications this evening, anybody that wishes to speak before the board, applicant or otherwise, we'd ask a couple of things. First, that when you approach the podium that you state your name and address for the record. And at this time, for this application, anybody wishing to speak, if you would stand and take an oath with our city attorney, please. Yeah, just... Thank you. Mr. Benson, would you like to give an introduction to this application?
I would be happy to. Ms. Mullins is seeking approval of a conditional use permit, or this conditional use permit, to allow a residential use on the property that is zoned neighborhood commercial, which is, the property of which is located at 5902 Blue Ridge Boulevard. She is seeking this application, or approval of this application, as she is in the process of opening a bakery at this property in an existing building, and wishes to also have the option of allowing a residential use to, or a person to reside on the second floor of the building. The neighborhood commercial zoning district does not allow residential uses by right. Therefore, in order for her or for a person to reside on this property, it would require a approval of a conditional use permit. The property or the building on the property was originally constructed as a house and has most recently been used as a residential home, but has been vacant for more than 6 months, and therefore it no longer, the residential use aspect is no longer a permitted use on the property. So with that, I'll allow the applicant to provide more further detail. I would also note that as part of the bakery use on the property, a driveway, or excuse me, parking lot will need to be constructed. We have not finalized or received the site plan for that driveway and parking lot area yet, but this is for the residential use component of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. So just to be clear, we're just considering the residential.
That's correct.
All other things relating to the site plan for the commercial use not to be considered with this case this evening.
That's correct, and that's why I do not have you did not receive the site plan or landscape plan, things like that, in the packet.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Ms. Mullins, if you'd like to come up to the podium. And again, for the record, if you just state your name and address. Good evening.
My name is Wanda Mullins. I have purchased the property at 5902 Blue Ridge Boulevard, Raytown, Missouri, 64133.
Say on your application this evening.
Yes, I actually also do have my contractor that's here with me, and we have spoken with Andy Boyd regarding what we needed to provide to him. We have an architect also that's working along with drawing up the plan as far as what we would need to do as far as the parking goes, as well as the occupancy would go as well. And he's also providing what we would need to have as far as living arrangements for that piece of property as well. I will actually be doing the baking from the commercial aspect downstairs. We will also have the commercial kitchen per the health department's requirements, and anything else that we were needing to provide, we have a contractor that's willing to work those issues out, and he's also, as I've stated, spoken with Andy and what our requirements would be. And he's also working with getting information from health department on what we would need to provide as well.
Okay. Will you be the tenant in the space?
I will be the tenant, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I relocated from Georgia a few months ago, retired, working for the Civil Service Department of the Army for 30 plus years, and no, I'm here with my daughter and her husband and my 5 grandkids. I'm living right now currently in Lakewood with them. So,
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? No. Ms. Mullen, thank you. We may call you back up.
okay.
Is there any request for public comment at this time? None appearing? Any additional information from staff this evening, Mr. Benson?
A few things and some additional information that I didn't have at the time the staff report was written. At the time it was drafted, Andy Boyd had not spoken with the applicant's architect, and since then he has, as the applicant stated, and they are making progress towards submitting the plans and site plan and those types of things. So in the staff report, the staff's recommendation was for continuance of this application. Would like to change that. Unless you'd like to see that information, staff is comfortable with you acting on it tonight. Without that, unless you would, for other reasons, you would like to see that site plan or landscape plan, things like that. Mr. Boyd has told me, based on his conversations he's had with, I believe it's their architect, under the city's fire code, because the first floor is a commercial use and the second floor would be a residential use, there will be fire separation between those 2 floors, which is the architect is looking into or addressing that in working through that. So from a life safety standpoint, that this residential use, even if you recommend approval of it, and if the Board of Aldermen even approves it before the construction plans are all approved, it will require that aspect to be complied with under the city's adopted codes, and if they don't, the residential use will not be allowed. So there is that safety factor that will be addressed regardless of, or if the application's approved, if the application is approved. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any for me.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Thank you. So if this business were to open, obviously I'd be very hopeful that they were successful and everything went great, but in a situation, let's say that the business didn't last, would the apartment above still be eligible as like a rental property? How would that work?
That would depend on how you would like to regulate it. It can run, if it's approved, you can make it the approval for a period of time, limited to a period of time, or you can make it in perpetuity so it can always be there. You can tie it to this owner only, or you can leave that open, so if she were to move away, sell the property, somebody else could do the same thing, or even if she owned the property but moved away from it, lived elsewhere, that she can rent that out, the upstairs out. So that's your options are in that regard.
So there's no condition for that written, this, like if it were to be approved the way it is now, how would it stand?
How would staff recommend? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I don't see anything in a staff recommendation about that.
Based on the amount of work and the cost of putting in the fire separation between the first and second floors, that's not necessarily a cheap thing to do in this case. So staff's recommendation would be that it not just be tied to the applicant living upstairs, but that if it's approved, that it be allowed to other individuals to be able to live on the second floor.
No, I understand that. I was just getting clarity. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions of staff on this application? None appearing? At this time, I'll close the public hearing and ask the board to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the application for case number PZ 2015-004. Mr. Lightfoot?
I'd motion to approve the application with staff recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional board discussion this evening? None appearing. Mr. Bettis, would you call a vote, please?
I'd be happy to do so. One moment. Okay. Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Dwight?
Yes.
Ms. Hartwell?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
And Mr. Bettis is yes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Bettis. Ms. Smolin, thank you for coming out this evening. Mr. Benson, what will be next for this case?
This application will now come before the Board of Aldermen on June 2nd at 7 p.m.
June 2nd. Very good. Thank you. Welcome to Raytown. Okay, next up this evening is a conditional use permit application that seeks to allow residential use in a neighborhood commercial district at 10200 East 63rd Terrace, Raytown, Missouri. Case number is PZ 2015-005, and the applicant is John Smith on behalf of Joe Medlin. Anybody wishing to speak on behalf of this application, if you would stand and take an oath with our city attorney, please.
All those of you who intend to testify, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give in this court will be true, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing, and similar to the last application, when we call you up, if you'll state your name and address for the record. And at this time, we'll enter the relevant city exhibits into the record, which are a conditional use permit application submitted by the applicant, a publication of public notice hearing in the Daily Record newspaper, public hearing notices sent to property owners within 185 feet of the subject property, City of Raytown zoning ordinance is amended, City of Raytown comprehensive plan, staff report on application for May 14th, 2015, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At this time, is there any ex parte communication regarding this case? Mr. Lightfoot?
I've not had recent ex parte communication, but I have in the past on this property and with the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
It will not affect my decision tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Any other ex parte communications? Not appearing? Mr. Benson, would you introduce this application?
Thank you. John Smith is seeking this conditional use permit approval of this application to allow a residential use to be located on this property. The property is zoned neighborhood commercial and is located at 10200 East 63rd Terrace. The property, Mr. Smith leases the property from Mr. Joe Medlin and operates a business on the property as well. So he's wanting to allow the residential use in conjunction with the business on the property. With that, I'll defer to the applicant for further details about his application.
All right, thank you, Mr. Benson. Mr. Smith, if you'd like to come up to the podium.
Hello, my name is John Smith. I am purchasing the property located at 10200 East 63rd Terrace. I currently utilize it for office space, but ask for approval for residential use.
Okay, and will you be using the space? Will you be the tenant in that space? Or will you be,
Actually, my mom will be living there.
okay? Thank you. Any questions of the applicant at this time? Mr. Lightfoot?
Full of questions tonight, but, so, in the documents we have here, it says that Joe Medlin is the property owner, but you're actually purchasing the property, not renting the property.
Correct.
Okay,
We have a contract for deed.
gotcha. And are you currently running business out of that location?
I have some files there, and a couple trailers in back. We do preservation for HUD on the side. It's a side business, but it's kind of slowed up now, and my mom's needing a place, and it's all one level, so it's perfect for her.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? Mr. Smith, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll call you back up as necessary. Any requests for public comment at this time on this application? None appearing. Mr. Benson, any additional staff comments and anything on the recommendation this evening?
No other comments. Staff is recommending approval of this application subject to two conditions. One, that the residential use be allowed as long as the applicant, in this case, owns the property. Two, that the compliance with all applicable ordinances and codes of the city of Raytown, the state of Missouri, and the United States. I'd be happy to answer any questions for me, if you have any for me.
Mr. Smith, real quick, can I have you come back to the podium just real quick? Thank you. Have you read and are you in agreement with the recommendations of staff this evening?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions of staff at this time? Mr. Lightfoot?
Yes. Mr. Benson, so I remember this property, has come through a couple of times. So originally it was residential and then it was moved to commercial. Am I recalling this right?
I don't remember this being used as a residence before. My first knowledge of this specific property and its use was as a plumbing business or an office, and the building caught fire when the plumbing business was there. Had substantial damage to it. That's when the property was sold to Mr. Medlin, and then he renovated the property and obtained a Chapter 353 tax abatement from the city for those renovations. And then I don't remember if there was a business operated at when he owned it. I believe he leased it to some other business, and I don't remember what that business was, or if in fact I'm remembering that correctly. And then Mr. Smith, I don't remember the exact time frame, how long ago it was, but began leasing it or in the process of purchasing it, lease to purchase, I believe, or contract to purchase it.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure how long ago his mother began living there is when we found out about it, and then he applied for this application.
Okay. Well, that kind of led into what I was thinking. I thought it had a 353 abatement, so the 353 abatement, does it still apply to the property?
It does, because it's just tied, it wasn't tied to jobs or business being there. It was tied to the improvement of the property itself and renovation from the fire damage.
There's nothing that ties the 353 only to Joe Medlin. It would actually be able to be passed on to
That's correct.
the new owner?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions by staff this evening? Mr. Bettis?
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Given that, is there any sort of timeline on that 353 abatement? Is it just indefinite, out of curiosity?
No, there is a timeline, and I apologize, I don't remember if it's at least 10 years. The length of the abatement is tied to the amount of investment being made in the property, and I don't remember what that investment amount is. The lowest tier is for a 10-year, 100% abatement, and then if it's over a certain amount of investment, then it's eligible for an additional 5 years at 50% abatement, or all the way up to 25 years, 50% abatement. I know it's not for 25 years. It's either 10 or 15. If I remember correctly, I believe it's a 10-year abatement, but it could be 15. And they're probably approximately 5 years into that abatement period.
Other questions of staff this evening? Mr. Dwight? Mr. Robinson?
I assume all the inspections have been done since the damage was completed.
Yes, yeah.
The damage is all
Yeah, that was completed a number of 4 or 5 years ago. And in fact, our building official's been in the building more recently with somebody living there to make sure as a residential use, it will comply with the city's construction, life safety codes of the city, and it does.
Other questions? Ms. Hartwell?
John, I'm trying to remember the 353, but if this goes back to residential at some point, the 353 does not stay at that, does it?
It does, because the 353 is not tied to the use of the land at all. It's tied to simply that the property improvements were made to the property.
Okay,
That's the
thank you.
intent. The intent of the chapter 353 is to promote improvements to the property, not necessarily the use. Sometimes on larger ones, very large chapter 353s, they'll be tied to job creation. But on the scale of this chapter 353 application, it was not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Benson, do you have any additional comments on this application?
I do not.
Okay. Any additional board discussion? None appearing? We'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'll take a board decision to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the application, which is case number PZ 2015-005. I have a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Robinson.
I move that we approve the application as is recommended by staff, and that the applicant be allowed to continue renovation.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Dwight. Any additional board discussion this evening? None appearing. Mr. Bettis, would you take the vote on this application, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. Do better this time. Mr. Lightfoot? Yes. Ms. Dwight?
Yes.
Ms. Hartwell?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis? Yes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Bettis. Mr. Benson, what's the next path for this case in this applicant?
This application will come before the Board of Aldermen on June 2nd at 7 p.m.
June 2nd. Okay, very good. Mr. Smith, thank you for coming out this evening. See you on June 2nd. Next on our agenda this evening is a conditional use permit application that seeks to allow an indoor shooting range in the Highway Corridor Commercial District at 8830 Highway 350, Raytown, Missouri 64133. The case number is PZ 2015-006, and the applicant is Jim Bloomquist on behalf of Bill and Marilyn Green. Anybody wish to speak on behalf of this application this evening? If you would stand and take an oath with our city attorney, please. Very good, thank you. And with the opening of this public hearing through the procedure of swearing in speakers, I'll introduce the relevant city exhibits. It's a conditional use permit application submitted by the applicant, publication of notice of public hearing in the Daily Record newspaper. Public hearing notice is sent to property owners within 185 feet of the subject property. City of Raytown zoning ordinance is amended, City of Raytown comprehensive plan, and staff report on application for May 14th, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At this time, is there any ex parte communication amongst the board members? I do have ex parte communication. I know the applicant. I've done business with the applicant's business previously. I do not believe that will impact my ability to give impartial decision on this application. Okay. Mr. Benson, can you give us an introduction of this application, please?
I would be happy to. The applicant is seeking this conditional use permit to allow an indoor shooting range at 8830 Highway 350. The applicant leases space at this location from Billy and Marilyn Green, which are the property owners. The proposed use will be located in an existing building with multiple tenant spaces adjacent to an existing gun and ammunition store known as Blue Steel Gun and Ammo, which is associated with this proposed business. The property is zoned highway corridor commercial. The use, though, is not a permitted use in that district and thus requires a conditional use permit. I'll defer to the applicant for further details about the proposed use itself and be happy to answer any questions otherwise.
Great, thank you, Mr. Benson. If you'd like to approach the podium at this time, and just as a reminder, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Steve Brackeen. My address is 12116 East 78 Terrace, KCMO. And what we want to do is put a shooting range next door to our existing business. The building is all one building. You can pass from the space I have now into the new space. However, the public would not be allowed to come into, they won't be able to come into the gun store and pass to the range. The gun store will have, or the range will have its own separate entrance. It'll be a complete separate business. It'll all run under Blue Steel Guns and Ammo, but you know, you won't pass from the store to the range. You will have to go in there separately. Right now, the people that I've talked to that are giving me proposals to build the range, we're looking at 12 indoor lanes. 2 lanes you'll be able to shoot a rifle in up to 50 caliber. The rest of the lanes you can shoot handguns only in. Their Maguette range is one I'm talking to, and Action Target Company. Maguette typically only builds police ranges. They're state-of-the-art, all computerized. We would have it monitored. with cameras, and there will always be 2 range officers. One's always on cameras, one's always in person at the range, monitoring the range. It'd be a very safe facility. We've been in the business up there for 5 years now. We've had no problems. All I've heard since I opened is, when are you going to put a range in? Everybody likes to shoot their handguns and they need a place to go. So we would like the opportunity to put a range in and serve the public there. And I think it'd be a very safe and drug-free facility. No alcohol, no drugs. We monitor that big time at our store now. I think it'd be good for the community. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant at this time? Mr. Lightfoot?
So I look at an aerial view of the building.
Yes.
It looks like it may have 4 parcels.
It does.
So one parcel's taken with Blue Steel Gun and Ammo. That's your business.
Correct?
And then which side would the gun range be on? The outside?
The north, outside, yeah.
Be on the north to the outside? And then what are the other 2 businesses in those parcels?
The business directly adjoining mine to the south is a pawn shop. The other parcel is not connected to the building, and that's Raytown Transmission. They stand alone. The whole property is on one deed. Raytown Transmission stands alone. The other 3, the pawn store, Blue Steel Guns and Ammo, and the range would all be one building. So
I see.
you cannot pass from the pawn store into my building. However, it's firewalled in between, concrete, so they're separate.
I mean, if this kind of business were to open, how would you regulate the people that could actually, do they bring their own gun? Do you rent them a gun? And then how do you know they're allowed to even have the right to shoot a gun, that they were not a felon or something like that?
No range knows if an individual is a felon that comes in with a firearm, unless we would directly ask that person, are you a felon? I don't know that we can do that. A felon in the state can own a black powder gun. They could come in and shoot a black powder gun legally. The only way we can regulate it, you can come in and bring your own firearm. You have to follow all the range rules and meet the range's requirement, i.e. the dress code. If your pants are sagging down to your knees, you're not going to get in. If you got a hoodie on, sunglasses, we'll have a whole list of strict dress codes that you have to comply with to come in the range. If from the analysis that I've gotten from all the companies that build ranges, they're the safest things. There's very few accidents reported at the ranges. In our city, all the ranges that are running have had no accidents. The only thing we've had over on Johnson County side is you get a suicide. People came in the range and shot themselves. They figured that was a good place to do it, I guess. I don't know. But that's the only thing that I know of that's happened. There's very few accidents in firearm stores. Everybody's safe. You're safety conscious. You have a range man standing there. If you get out of line, you get tossed out. You pay. It's not a cheap thing to be a member of a range. It costs you money. You don't get hoodlums for say in there. It's very strict and very well organized.
Well, I'm in no way trying to make an analogy that only a felon would want to shoot a gun. I'm just saying it's against the law for a felon to shoot it, even be in possession
It
of a
is
handgun.
against the
So
law, but
I didn't know if you take a copy of someone's driver's license when they come in.
their
or-
membership app, we have driver's license. Even if I took a copy of their driver's license, I don't have the right to run a felony check on that person.
No, I understand.
Nor am I capable of doing that. So I can't even, when I purchase a firearm, the way the laws are set up, I take your driver's license, book the gun from you to my store. If that gun is stolen, I sell that gun. I'll give you a good example. I recently sold a gun to a young man from here, lives in Raytown, going in the military. He was in Texas Border Patrol stopped him in Texas and he had that gun. It was a stolen gun. Texas law reads you go to jail no matter where you got the gun. The young man says, I have a receipt right here. I bought it in Raytown, Missouri for Blue Steel Guns and Ammo. Poor kid had to spend the night in jail. They called me. I had to confirm that he bought the gun from me. The gun was stolen and recovered at Forest Police Department in St. Louis. I bought it from the police department in St. Louis, sold it to this kid. He got arrested because St. Louis never took it off the stolen guns list. I can't control that. You know, there's things beyond your control as a gun store owner. Knowing if a weapon's stolen, I buy it. If the police come and say, hey, that weapon was stolen, I have to relinquish it and I'm out the money. So there's no way for me to guard myself against personal loss in my business for a stolen gun. It's a poor system. There should be a way for gun store owners to buy a gun off the street and make a phone call to the gun registry to see if that's a stolen weapon so I don't lose money. In the past 5 years, I've lost about almost $4,000 on guns I had to relinquish back to different jurisdictions because they were sold to me and they were stolen. So that's kind of a sore subject with me in the gun business.
So people, you would have to become a member. Someone can, like, say I wanted to walk in and shoot a gun. Could I come in and then you just, and do it, or you need to
Yes.
join a membership? And
I have memberships, and you always have by the hour shooting for non-members.
Okay.
It's usually more costly for non-members to come in. Members are always first. A non-member has to sit and wait their turn. I will rent guns, and yes, you can walk in and shoot by the hour. That's typical of all ranges. But we start out with memberships and then trickle down.
thank you.
Ms. Hartwell?
Just in case you do get a crazy in there, what kind of security do you have?
We will have cameras on the facility with a range master at the camera. We will have a range master, and all the employees of the gun store are armed and in the range. You get somebody in there shooting, it's not going to last long. We're all trained. You know, if you've ever been in my store, everybody's got a sidearm on. They know how to use them. We're going to defend ourselves if you come in there and get crazy. So,
Thank you.
Ms. Dwight?
young people can shoot a gun that we deem are capable of doing it. There's actually instructors when you bring a young person in. We will allow them to shoot a gun, nothing that they couldn't handle. It'd probably be a .22 pistol or a small bore .22 rifle. We start children out with pellet rifles and then move them up. Their parents have to be there with them, and it's all instructed with an instructor on hand. A child is never turned loose with a firearm under any circumstances.
What comes to mind is the incident in Arizona where
That was a full automatic weapon. A 12-year-old girl should have never put it in her hand. The biggest problem with that accident was they handed her a short-barreled, fully automatic gun. The gun's only this big. It's like a MAC-10. When she started shooting, she wasn't strong enough to keep the barrel of that gun down. It just came back like this and hit the instructor. That would never, you know, that's something we wouldn't even allow. You don't hand a child a machine gun. What were they thinking? Exactly. And you know, we can sit here all night and go through all these incidences. Each person's range is regulated by the person in charge, and we have very strict rules up at our store. You all work for the city. You probably know of any incidents that we've had there. I take immediate control of it. Nothing's ever gotten out of hand. I have thrown people out of the store. You know, I've had them call the police because I threw them out of the store. We've never had incidents that we couldn't control. The store is set up specifically for the protection of the inhabitants of the store. It is designed for you to come in one way in, and everybody in my store is looking at you when you come in. And you have to think about those things, unfortunately, today, but we take a lot of precautions.
Mr. Bettis?
Thank you. And my question is, just in recollection, on rifles, you said that 2 of the bays were, because there's 12 bays in total, so the 10 would be for the handguns, and then 2 would be for the rifles. Is that correct? And then just remind me if I'm correct on this, but rifles have like more speed of impact,
Yes.
and so therefore they need some sort of enhancements to make sure the safety is maintained. What do you have in mind for that, out of curiosity?
Well, I'd have to go into the specifications. Those 2 lanes will be, it's a certain grade of steel and backdrop, and then it has rubber in front of it. All the traps are angled from the floor and the wall. All bullets hit it and actually go through that, and then they hit a solid steel backstop and just fall to the ground, and an auger takes the lead out automatically to keep it cleaned out. Those 2 particular ranges will just have steel capable of taking a rifle blast. Those 2 lanes will be used mostly by our staff. Anytime we repair something and we disassemble a firearm and reassemble it, before it goes back to the homeowner, or the gun owner, pardon me, we have to fire that weapon. And it just saves us a trip to the range, basically. We'll use it a lot for ourselves. You get into high-powered rifles and stuff, the noise is so great. Somebody would sit in there and shoot it a couple times, they'll have enough of that. We'll go back to the handgun shooting. But it's not something that I look to use constantly, but I do have to have that in the facility, so.
I do have a couple of questions. How is venting handled for a firing range to where it's
a
not
negative
a
air
problem
source.
for the surrounding area?
It's a negative airflow system. You have to have a separate entrance to the range, kind of like a dual entrance to a building. And when you open the door, no air can come out of the range. Actually, when you're on the range line, the first 12 foot of the range where the people stand shooting is negative airflow. It only draws air one way. There's a filter in the wall behind you, and that's actually pushing air out because the smoke from shooting, it goes downrange and then it's vented out of the building and it's all filtered. That is the most expensive part of owning a range. Depending on how many people shoot, anywhere from every 6 to 8 weeks, all the filtration has to be changed in that. It's a high maintenance part of the business. It's very safe. The air, you can't even smell when you're in there shooting. If any of you've been around a firearm and you shoot somewhere in an enclosed area, you know the gases are in the air, and gunpowder tastes sweet. You can taste it. But in these ranges, the ventilation system is a good 30% of the cost of the whole project. It weighs 14,000 pounds. Right now, I'm trying to figure out, I'm working with that company. We may have to put some steel reinforcement standing vertical in the building and horizontal outside the roof so that system can set on the roof. And that way it's not in sight and can be easily maintained for us. So we're trying to figure that part out right now.
Okay. What about controlling sound outside the range?
The range, believe it or not, it's an all concrete block building now. We'll probably have a concrete block center wall up the middle of the range, so there will be 6 shooting lanes on this side, 6 shooting lanes on that side. The back wall is all concrete block. Your ceiling is steel with a wood on the steel. It's basically like a skid plan. Bullets are soft when they go into the wood. The steel redirects them back down into the back of the range, and that also helps with sound. I've been there 5 years now, and you know, we have our own indoor bullet trap, and we shoot every single day. We fire something in there. Never had that. People don't even know we're doing it. If you're in the store, you might no, but outside the building, you really won't have much sound at all. It's well controlled.
Okay.
It's airlocked. You know, when you go through that second entrance, the range is airlocked. In fact, we're gonna have a classroom up against that cement wall on the front of the building where we'll teach self-defense classes and shooting classes. You know, it's right there at the range. It shouldn't even affect them.
Okay. How are you planning on operating as far as hours go? Is it, since it's membership, is it 24 hours a day or?
No, I will probably go 10 a.m. And when we first opened, we've been talking about this. When we first opened, we thought we would go till like 10 a.m. to 9 in the evening, and then just see how it goes. If we don't get enough traffic, then we'll shorten those hours up in the evening. You know, Raytown, 7:38, it's pretty dead. Been here my whole life. That's the way it's been. So, but if we keep traffic till 9 o'clock, then I will have it open till 9. So,
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant at this time? Thank you. We'll call you back up if anything else comes about. Oh, Mr. Bettis.
Are you gonna allow, given that installation, are you gonna allow black powder guns in there?
not too much. That's, you know, it's, the black powder guys belong to black powder clubs, and they're a breed of their own. They're mountain men, per se. You won't find too many of them at the range. There's a couple of black powder clubs here local. I know lots of guys. They're not indoor shooters. It takes too long to clear up the air after they've been there. And not that we would not test fire one, but we certainly wouldn't want somebody there trying to shoot 50 shots. First of all, he's only got an hour. He's going to load one at a time. He's going to be there. He might get 10 shots off, so probably not too much black powder.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Benson, any additional comments on this application?
I have no additional comments. Staff is recommending approval of the application subject to compliance with all applicable ordinances and laws of local, state, and federal laws and ordinances.
Okay. Any additional questions of the board to staff this evening? Mr. Lightfoot?
So, because we are here to talk about land use, right, and not necessarily the business itself is kind of a separate matter. So, land use wise, have you found anything that was similar to this where, you know, right next to a highway? Is that something that typically happens? Is it I think there's one in Lee Summit now called Frontier that's right next to 291. Is this the similar type of thing, or?
Mr. Kepke and I were actually talking about the one in Lee Summit because it's adjacent to his office, or near his office. As far as highway location, besides that one, I know Clay Como has had a indoor shooting range, and it's on Highway 69, about maybe half a mile off of Interstate 435. There's another one. I apologize. I'm just drawing a blank on where it's at, but yeah, to my knowledge, the location off a highway or away from a highway hasn't, to my knowledge, has no impact on the land use one way, or either the use itself, such as this, or surrounding land uses around this type of use. And I haven't seen any of the ones I'm familiar with. I haven't seen any adverse impacts or any impact really one way or the other on surrounding land uses around these.
Thank you.
Ms. Hartwell?
John, do you know if the Pioneer gun range is still open down on Brickyard Road?
I do not know.
It is?
It is.
My husband and I used to go down there quite a lot when he was a police officer.
Miss? Yeah. The question was whether or not Pioneer Gun Range, just outside of Raytown, is still operating. other questions to staff on this application? And any additional comments from our audience this evening? None appearing? This time I will close the public hearing, and I will ask for a board decision to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the application, case number PZ 2015-006. Mr. Lightfoot? Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Bettis, would you call the vote, please?
Mr. Lightfoot? Yes. Ms. Dwight?
Yes.
Ms. Hartwell? Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. Bettis is a yes. Pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Bettis. Mr. Benson, what's next for this case?
This application now will go before the Board of Aldermen on June 2nd at 7 p.m.
June 2nd. There's a busy agenda coming up for
Yes,
our
it
Board
is.
of Aldermen. All right. Mr. Burkeen, thank you for coming out this evening. All right, next on our agenda this evening is a conditional use permit application that seeks to allow an animal kennel at the Highway Corridor Commercial District at 8814 East 67th Street, Raytown, Missouri 64133. The case number is PZ 2015-007, and the applicant is Susan Jones on behalf of Chain of Hope, on behalf of Summit Bank of Kansas City. With the opening of this public hearing this evening, we'd ask anybody that wants to speak on this case this evening to please stand and take an oath with our city attorney. Thank you. Just as a matter of record, when you come up this evening, please state your name and address so it can be entered into the record. And at this time, we have some exhibits to enter into the record. First is a conditional use permit application submitted by the applicant, publication of notice of public hearing in the Daily Record newspaper. Public hearing notice is sent to the property owners within 185 feet of the subject property. The City of Raytown zoning ordinance is amended. City of Raytown comprehensive plan, and staff report on the application for May 14th, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At this time, I'd ask if there's any ex parte communication from the board. None appearing. Mr. Benson, would you introduce this application, please?
I would be happy to. The applicant is seeking this conditional use permit as they are, as the entity, Chain of Hope, is wanting to move to this location at 8814 East 67th Street. They're currently located on a property at Woodson Road and westbound Highway 350. As they rent a portion of veterinary clinic Dr. Kennedy operates at that location. The facility will include offices as well as kennels. In the staff report, I stated that it would be up to 15 kennels or dogs kept at the property. After I sent out the staff report, the applicant notified me and I misunderstood what they had written. 15 would be the average. They indicated in an email to me that it could be up to 20. That would not be a typical number or a regularly occurring. Well, I'll stop at that. And I'll let them clarify that if you have questions. A daycare was previously located on this property but has closed a few months ago, and since that point the property has been vacant. The property has also gone into foreclosure and, as you noted, is currently owned by a bank. So this would introduce a new a reuse of the property. Our building official has been in the property. I believe it was earlier this week, or I believe it was Monday. and has done an inspection of it, or initial inspection of it, to make sure there are no major code issues that can't be overcome with this type of use, moving into a building that was originally constructed for residential purposes, converted to a daycare at some point, and now for this proposed use. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any for me at this point. Otherwise, I'll defer to the applicant to provide further details.
All right, if the applicant would like to come up to the podium.
Good evening. I'm Susan Jones. I'm board president of Chain of Hope. And as a point of clarification, my address or where we are currently? My personal address?
Your personal address.
409 Southwest Lakeview Boulevard in Lee Summit.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to tell us about your application this evening?
Yes. Chain of Hope is an outreach and rescue organization. We've been incorporated since 2010. As Mr. Benson stated, we've been subleasing part of Kennedy's Animal Clinic for the last several years. Space constraints and increasing rent costs put us in a position that we wanted to look for our own independent location. Saw this property, and the way in which it has been modified really is pretty ideal for our circumstances. Chain of Hope outreach is our primary mode of operation. We provide outreach to the greater Kansas City urban core, assisting pet owners to learn how to better manage their animals and care for them properly. We provide food, shelter in terms of dog houses, medical care, including spay and neuter, to try and prevent pet overpopulation. As Mr. Benson indicated, 12 to 15 animals on site that would be housed is typically average. In periods of extreme weather, heat in the summer, freezing temperatures in the winter, and in particularly springtime when there are lots of puppies. Those numbers might be a little bit higher, but we focus on quality, not quantity. We need a larger space to accommodate the needs of the animals and the needs of just other resources, storage, food, things like that that we need. It is not intended to expand our program, again, because we focus primarily on doing our work in the community, but unfortunately, our education and our outreach efforts don't always work, and we find animals in dire jeopardy and need, and are often surrendered to us when owners cannot manage the health and the well-being of the animal. So we bring them into our program, train them, bring them back to health, make sure they're fully vetted. We have a number of foster homes in the community that foster many of our animals, but the goal is to move them through quickly. We work with other rescue organizations to transfer animals to them, because the goal is to move them on to permanent homes as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Did you read the staff recommendations that are with the application this evening?
Yes.
And are you in agreement with those?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the applicant at this time? Ms. Hartwell?
If you're with the Chain of Hope, I'm assuming this is a no-kill organization,
Yes. We would,
and you never come to a place where you have to do that?
there have been circumstances due to the quality of life of an animal, if health conditions are severe enough that the quality of life is
But generally, you do not have to do
that is correct.
Also, do you rent any of these out to people? Say like someone's going out of town. My neighbor has two big, huge dogs, but they always go clear up north of the river to find kennels that can take the dogs. And so I was wondering if you do rent out to individuals in case of that.
No, we don't. We don't typically board out to the public. The care of the animals is strictly to those that are brought into the program from rescue.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Dwight?
In the staff recommendations, it did have that not to exceed 15 was, I don't know if it should, say something different there? Because you said you're aware of those, and then you said, well, you were a little confused about it, so what, I'm asking, what is it?
In the application, the original application that I completed, it was intended as an average of 15, is how it was stated. So we're licensed by the Department of Agriculture. We have been since we've been in operation and have always been in good standing. There aren't any limits there, but again, we limit those because if the numbers get too big, it's not manageable, and it's not manageable to ensure the needs of the animals in our care. So typically 15 might be an average, and that might even be a little bit high, but occasionally it'll be lower than that. You get in a litter of 8 puppies like we did a couple weeks ago, that number's going to be up a little bit higher for just a while.
If I could add to that, based on my conversation with Ms. Jones prior to tonight's meeting and what she just stated now as far as them being regulated by the Department of Agriculture, I don't see a need to have condition number 1 that's in the staff recommendation in there, because she raised a good point. Puppies in a kennel take up far less space than, say, a larger dog. And so if we were to randomly, or I shouldn't say randomly, but pick a number, 20, let's say 20 kennels, 20 large dogs obviously take up a lot more space in their kennels than 20 puppies or medium-sized dogs or whatever size it may be. So the Department of Agriculture is going to actually regulate that, and I hadn't thought of that, because our city animal control is regulated also by the Department of Agriculture. So they're going to, the Department of Agriculture, which is in effect falls under recommended condition number 5 of compliance with all local, state, and federal regulations. So that in effect, by that condition number 5 that's recommended gets back to condition number 1 that's in there.
Any other questions of the applicant? Mr. Lightfoot?
Yes, so will the animals stay like inside at nighttime, or do they all live inside at nighttime, or?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The backyard of the property has a 6-foot privacy fence. Obviously, the dogs will be let out, not all at once. We only let the ones that get along together out together. So for periods of play and exercise, but they would not even be outside unless someone is on the property to supervise them. They would never be left outside unless there was supervision available for them. But at night, yes, they would be inside kenneled.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Jones, thank you. We'll call you back up if we
Thank
come
you.
upon something. Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Mr. Benson, or I guess at this time, is there any additional public comment on this application? None appearing. Mr. Benson, any additional information on this application?
Yes, the property taxes on this property are unpaid. They go back because it's been in foreclosure. They have not been paid. The applicant has made us aware of that. At the time of closing, those will be brought current. And so as one of our, we are recommending approval of the application and as subject to the following conditions. 1, that all kennels be located inside the building. 2, that animals when outside of the building shall be supervised by an employee of Chain of Hope. 3, veterinary services, microchipping, adoption, or other events shall not be held on the property that results in general public coming to the property. That does not preclude volunteers coming to the property to assist. 4, compliance with all applicable ordinances and codes of the City of Raytown, the State of Missouri, and the United States. And then I'd like to add a 5th one, that all taxes applicable to the property shall be paid in full prior to the use operating from the subject property. So assuming unless they have questions about that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Benson, you named off 4 plus a 5th one that you just added. In our packet, we have 5 recommendations.
Right. Number 1, the staff recommendation that the number of kennels not exceed 15. Staff would not recommend that one.
Not recommended. Okay, I'm sorry I missed that. Thank you. Ms. Hartwell?
That's a private matter between Chain of Hope and the bank that they're purchasing the property from. I don't know which entity will pay that, but they'll get, as long as they get paid. It's one of those, it is in the sense that there's back taxes due on the property, and to make sure that they get paid. The application for a conditional use permit actually has a provision on there that all taxes are current on the property. They were very upfront letting us know that was not the case in this particular property, but that they also said at the time of closing that would be, they were working with the current buyer or the bank to rectify that at closing.
Other questions of staff this evening? None appearing? At this time, I will close the public hearing, and I'll seek a board decision to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the application PZ 2015-007.
I move to approve.
Have a motion from Ms. Hartwell. I have a second from Mr. Bettis. Thank you. Any additional board discussion? Just as a clarification, the motion and the second is in, with the adoption of all the
Yes.
recommendations of
Yes.
staff? Okay,
Sorry, John.
thank you. Mr. Bettis, would you call the vote, please?
Happy to do so. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Hartwell?
Yes.
Ms. Dwight?
Yes.
Mr. Lightfoot? Yes. Mr. Bassett, yes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Bettis. Ms. Jones, thank you for coming out this evening. Mr. Benson, I'm going to take a guess here. June 2nd?
That's
Board of
correct.
Aldermen?
7 p.m.
Okay,
Be a fun-filled agenda.
okay, great, thank you. Okay, moving on. Our next application this evening is a final site plan for proposed convenience store at 9323 East 350 Highway, Raytown, Missouri. The case number is PZ 2015-003, and the applicant is Triple M Enterprises. At the open of this public hearing, I'd ask anybody speaking on behalf of this application to stand and take oath with our city attorney. Thank you. We do have some exhibits to enter into record this evening. First is a site plan application submitted by the applicant. We have a site development plan, publication of public notice hearing in the Daily Record newspaper, public hearing notices sent to property owners within 185 feet of the subject property, City of Raytown zoning ordinance, City of Raytown comprehensive plan, and a staff report on the application for May 14, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Is there any ex parte communication that needs to be disclosed for this application? None appearing. Mr. Benson, if you would introduce this application to us, please.
I would be happy to. Before I do that, I would like to enter some additional exhibits.
Okay.
We have a sample board, material sample board, which I'll hand to you to look at more closely. I'd like to enter it as Exhibit H.
Okay.
We received a letter, which you have in front of you, from Luchin, which is their design engineering firm. I'd like to enter that as Exhibit I. That letter relates to the number of various design standards of the Highway 350 corridor design standards that they're requesting waivers to. And then Exhibit J, which is a, I apologize, I'm drawing a total blank on what you call this, a cross-section drawing landscape of the landscape plan and building from the south side or the adjoining property to the south of the property, of the subject property. So, which you also have in front of, or should have in front of your seats. I'd like to enter that as Exhibit J.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Benson.
with that, Triple M Enterprises, doing business as Quick Trip, is seeking approval of this site plan for a new convenience store at the location of the current Quick Trip store on Highway 350 at 9323 Highway 350. Their new store will replace the existing Quick Trip store. They are also have acquired the property, two adjoining properties to the east, one of which is at the literally on the southwest corner of Highway 350 and Maple, directly east of the existing Quick Trip store, has on which a small strip shopping center is on. And they've also acquired the property directly south of that, which has it's a building with two or three garage doors in it. And that would all three properties cumulatively will comprise this proposed project. So, as you mentioned, they have submitted a site plan which you have in front of you. The project proposes a new convenience store, new gas pump islands and canopy, new entrances and exit drives on Highway 350, as well as the removal of the existing driveway onto Maple that's very close to the signalized intersection, and then construction of a new entrance further south onto Maple, and then a stormwater detention facility that will be constructed to meet pre-development stormwater runoff standards. And then lastly, they also propose to construct a 5-foot wide sidewalk along that portion of the property abutting Maple Avenue. So with that, I will defer to the applicant to provide further detail on this project, unless you have questions for me at this point.
Nope, none appearing.
If
you'd like-
also, if before the applicant comes up, I'd like to apologize to them. We normally go in sequence of application numbers. Obviously, I made an error tonight. We thought theirs would have, because of the magnitude of this project, there would be neighbors here. Obviously, we were wrong. So I apologize to them and having them wait through the other applications, because we normally follow the application numbers unless we anticipate something that's going to generate people coming and asking questions and allow this more simple applications to get through. And fortunately, we reversed that exact thought process. Didn't occur, so I apologize.
Great. Come on up. And again, just please state your name and address for the record.
Matt Brooks with Quick Trip Corporation at 5725 Fox Ridge Drive in Mission, Kansas, 66202. Commission members, I'm here to present the rebuild of the Generation 3 style store that you have seen throughout the Kansas City metropolitan area. One of our goals as a corporation is to rebuild all the existing facilities to the state-of-the-art Gen 3 facility. In order to do that, as a larger facility, we had to acquire some additional land. So our project proposes getting the 2 additional properties to the side of us, constructing a new canopy while the remaining operation stays open. Once all the improvements, the underground storm water detention facility, the new canopy, the new tanks are in place. Unfortunately, we don't like to do this, but we would actually have to shut down the operating store, demo that out, and then do an expedited construction on the new building. So this will typically employ, this building's larger, has more products inside the store, so it employs typically anywhere from 5 to 8 additional employees. This project is asking for no tax incentive dollars. So from day one, it will be taxable income. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if the commission has any.
Mr. White.
The store on Lee Summit Road and 40 Highway, would that be
Correct. Yes.
whatever you call it?
Generation 3. Yep. Yep.
All right.
Ms. Hartwell.
Where is the retention basin going to be? It looks to me like that there's a house on this one, on Maple, or used to be an automotive place.
Correct.
Okay,
It's actually underground, under pavement.
okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? Mr. Bettis?
My question is about the tanks. What are you gonna do with like the old tanks? Because if I remember correctly, they're kind of large.
Correct. They're decommissioned. They're not able to be reused. So actually, we work with Missouri Department of Natural Resources. We have our own actual environmental compliance agency that would decommission those tanks and then follow all the appropriate agencies' code or ordinances on that.
Are they actually removed then?
Correct.
The process is all provided by law and was paid for when tanks in the first place. There's a process for taking them out,
Mhm.
site, disposing of them, ensuring that there's no removal.
Correct.
Mr. Lightfoot?
So does expedited construction mean like 24/7 type of operation, or what's that?
Typically, it's 6 days a week construction. Our normal construction schedule would be 5 days a week, so we'd require the contractors to work 6 days a week.
Standard hours, just an extra day?
There might be some extended hours, but obviously adjoining close to the residential zone, we would obviously be mindful of our neighbors, so.
Thank you.
Mr. White?
It talked about the design versus license.
Yes,
It talks about here that the design has been shared, quick trips of the two projects will be coordinated.
correct.
That's happening.
It is, in fact, yes.
Mr. Bettis? You're fine.
That's okay.
Other questions of the applicant at this time? None appearing? Thank you. We'll call
Thank
you
you.
back up as needed.
Appreciate it.
Oh, we don't run off yet. We do have one.
Yes.
Ms. Hartwell?
The first initial construction process of the canopy and the detention system is estimated at 12 weeks. The construction or the demolition of the existing store and construction of the new facility is targeted at 20 weeks. So we've only done that a couple different times though, so that's why I say targeted at 20 weeks, so.
And do you have a target start date?
We're still working with one of the tenants on the strip center. They did renew their lease, so we plan on closing in July. They have 120 days post-close to operate. So I can't give you a targeted start date. So our best goal is per following that contract would be November, December-ish. We would obviously not like to start in the dead of winter. We would like to start, July, August. So,
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bettis?
And what are you planning on doing with the old location? I mean, I know it's been demolished. How are you going to utilize that space?
that's where the new building would sit.
The whole thing is just going to be that much?
It's basically what you have there now is just roughly a 4,000 square foot building that has no circulation around the back of the building. The new Generation 3 style store is really geared to sales and food with inside the store. Everyone knows gasoline's a dying business, believe it or not. People drive less, cars are more efficient, you make less money on gas, so we got to figure a way to replace that. So the building itself has circulation all the way around the building. It's got 4 entrances on it. It's got 2 on the side and 2 in the front. And so to really facilitate that layout, it really does take up a drastic amount more land. So typically we looked for sites around 1 acre. Now we need at least 2, so that's why.
Other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Get your seat this time. Mr. Bettis, any additional comments on this application? I'm sorry, Mr. Benson. You can comment too. So, no? Okay.
The city, we have reviewed the site plan in context to the Highway 350 design standards and the city's site plan content requirements. It is in substantial conformity. There's a few, what I'd refer to minor details we're still working through with the applicant on. They are requesting waivers to a few of the Highway 350 design standards. I'd like to just walk through those because those waivers do need to be approved by you if you're in agreement with doing so. The first waiver, excuse me, states that lots with frontage on both Highway 350 and an adjacent or intersecting collector street, except where it can be proven that other potential access points would cause greater traffic impacts as identified in the city's comprehensive plan, shall not be permitted access to Highway 350. This project does propose to maintain 2 existing access points on Highway 350. They're slightly moving, I say moving, being rebuilt on Highway 350. City staff and staff from the Missouri DOT have reviewed these locations and are in agreement with their location. From staff standpoint, this is a relatively high traffic generator relative to the uses around it. If they had no access off of Highway 350, we feel that it would actually create more traffic congestion and traffic issues on Maple Avenue if that was the case, as well as the adjoining properties that they are connecting to the parking lot or maintaining that connection to the parking lot to the west. And it would create traffic issues on that adjoining property. So maintaining their 2 driveway access points on Highway 350 we feel is the best solution, and therefore would be in agreement with waiving that requirement or design standard. The next standard states that driveways shall have a minimum spacing of at least 440 feet from roadway intersections measured from center line of the roadway intersection to center line of the driveway. Again, for the reasons I just stated, we're in agreement with waiving that. The driveways would be located closer than 440 feet to the intersection of Maple Avenue. The next standard states that driveways shall have a minimum spacing of 440 feet between adjacent driveways measured from center line to center line. In this case, their west driveway on Highway 350 is closer than 440 feet to the next driveway further west on an adjoining property. There's actually 2 other driveways to the west within that distance. At some future point, one of those driveways will be closed off as part of redevelopment if and when that would happen on an adjoining property. So we would end up reducing some of the existing number of driveways access points on this side of Highway 350. The reason that is an issue is I'll take you back to the Highway 350 corridor plan when that was developed a few years ago. The traffic analysis was done as part of that plan. And in this segment of Highway 350, and if I remember right, it's from Gregory Boulevard intersection with Highway 350 to Raytown Road, there's more than 40 intersection points or access points along the highway. Standard is once you reach 20, there's too many. It starts to create, the roadway starts to fail. We have over 40 in this segment, so we're very interested in consolidating driveways, not cutting properties off, but just consolidating access points and thereby reducing the total number of access points. This project won't work in that direction because they're maintaining all the existing access points or number of access points they currently have. But it is designed in a way to allow adjoining properties to access through their driveway, thereby allowing access to one of their access points. So in the long term, we will reduce at least one access point in that regard. And I apologize if that was really confusing, if I lost you on that. The next design standard is that all vehicle driveways are to be located off of side streets or frontage roads and encouraged to have direct ingress or egress from, not to have it direct ingress or egress from Highway 350, again, for the reasons I've already stated. And we are in favor or in agreement with waiving that. The next standard is that parking facilities shall be located to the side of buildings away from street frontages. Because this is a convenience store, that's very difficult to do short of putting the gas pumps and canopies behind the building adjacent to the residential area to the south, which we don't think would be a good land use compatibility aspect for the development of the property. They are moving the gas pump islands in effect to the side along Maple. It's still the front of the property, but it's not on the front along Highway 350. They are making it less visible in that regard, but they still will be visible. The pumps and island and canopies still will be visible from 350, just not to the same degree they are today. With that, I believe that is all the waivers. As I stated, staff is in favor of granting their request to waive those design standards. Unless you have any questions at the moment, we are recommending approval of this site plan as it has been presented. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Ms. Hartwell?
Yeah, that shopping center building will be demolished. Quick Trip or Triple M owns that property now. They've purchased that property, all of it. That building will be demolished, as well as the building to the south where Linex truck liners used to be. That building will be demolished, and that Linex building to the south is where their stormwater detention facility will be there. You had asked about their stormwater detention facility. It'll be underground. It will actually be on part of the property where where Linex truck liners used to be, to the south behind that shopping center, and that's where their drive on the Maple will come out onto. On Maple, that existing driveway onto Maple will be removed. Will be removed. Yeah. Their entrance will basically be where the driveway to the Linex building is. That's approximately where. Right. Right. That was a big interest, and they recognized it as well. That driveway will not be there any longer. And that will help that improvement of that intersection.
So, Mr. Benson, I've got a site plan here, a full-size site plan, and I'm not sure that everybody received this in their packet. I know I did not. So some of the description provided by the applicant and subsequent information you provided
Okay.
is unknown to us by and large.
Who does not have the site plan?
No, we do not.
None of you do?
No.
Because remember when I came in and
You picked it up. So none of you received the site plan? Okay.
No.
If you want to take a 5-minute recess, I can
Yeah,
go
that's
get them.
what I
I
was
didn't. I
suggesting.
apologize. I did not realize they didn't get sent out in the
I
packet.
think probably 5 to 10 minutes so people can kind of huddle around
Okay.
and see this and go through it thoroughly.
If you'd like to take a short recess, I'll be happy to go get them for you.
Yep, we'll recess this meeting for the next 10 minutes. That'll put us back at, let's just take 15, and that'll put us back here at 9 o'clock.
care about that.
Okay, at this time, we are back from our break to review site plans and are reconvening our hearing at this time. Public hearing is still open. Now that there's been review by the board of the site plan, if there's any questions of staff, please, now's the time. And/or we can call the applicant back up as well. No questions? All right, Mr. Benson, you took us through the waivers that are being sought for the 350 highway corridor. Anything else you'd like to discuss?
The last thing is the Exhibit J, which is this drawing. Just to point out why you were provided that. That is the cross-sectional view from looking from the residential property to the south of the building, directly south of the building, and looking back at the building. So gives you some representation of what the adjoining property, residential property, would see coming across. They are proposing some landscaping along the back. There is some underground utilities that limit the ability to do a lot of plantings there, but they are proposing to put a fence along the back property line to help provide some assistance in the visual screening. So with that, I don't have anything else unless you have questions that I can answer for you.
Okay, Ms. Hartwell?
John, how long or how high is that fence on the back of the property going to be? Where that other street that goes up behind Quick Trip, is there going to be something to, because I know somebody that jumps the fence on that street to the Quick Trip. So they jump the fence to get on that street. Yeah, somehow. Well, I guess I'm feeling like maybe 6 feet would be better for those residents back there. And I know it's, some properties back there need some work, but they still live there. Okay.
If I could clarify, that is intended to be a 6-foot fence. What's there today is 6 foot, so if it's 4 foot on the plans, that was just a mistake. So we would plan on a 6-foot fence.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. It is a privacy fence. And to bring up security, if I may, the Generation 3 style store has tons of security upgrades. We actually have 360 lot coverage of surveillance. So if you stand anywhere on the lot, you'll be on surveillance, camera and audio. So as well as with inside the store. So.
Other questions of the applicant or staff this evening? None appearing? At this time, I will close the public hearing, and I would ask for a board decision to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the application PZ 2015-003.
If I could, before a motion is made, the motion will need to include not just approval of the site plan, but approval of any of the waivers, any or all of the waivers.
Yes, that was my intention. Thank you. And I think maybe just for the purposes of clarity that we also include the 6-foot fence, privacy fence. I know since we have conflicting information before us. Mr. Lightfoot? Have a motion and a second. Any additional board discussion this evening? None appearing? Mr. Bettis, would you take the vote, please?
Mr. Robinson? Yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Lightfoot? Yes. Mr. Bettis? Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Benson, June 2nd?
June 2nd, 7 PM.
Very good.
May put 'em-
Gentlemen, thank you for coming out before the Planning and Zoning Commission this evening. We'll see you back on the 2nd. Any other business before the commission this evening? None appearing. Mr. Benson, any planning project reports?
Yes, I have a few. Family Dollar, if you haven't been by, down 63rd Street, by Evanston and 63rd, construction is well underway on that project. I don't have they haven't informed us of a target completion date, but the buildings that were there are long gone and the footings have been poured, and so they're making good progress, subject to the rainy weather. On a different type of projects, this Public Works Department is met with, actually today, met with the engineering firm doing, finishing up the design for bike lanes on Blue Ridge Boulevard, starting at 59th Street, going north to Woodson, and then from Woodson to 51st. There won't be bike lanes, but there'll be share the road signage on there, and the reason the two-way left turn lane between Woodson and 59th Street is going to be removed. There'll be one lane in each direction, and then that provides room for bike lanes through there. Between 51st and Woodson, it'll stay with the two-way left turn lane down the middle. It'll be narrowed slightly, like a couple of foot or 2 feet, and allowing for the wider travel lane, which will allow for sharing the road between vehicles and bicyclists. So, and there'll be signage for that as well. So we're not sure when that will go out for bid, though, or exact date, but we're hoping that will happen as soon as Missouri DOT approves those plans, which will probably be sometime this summer, go out for bid possibly this fall or late summer on that project.
Real quick, is there any grant money that's helping with that project?
Yes, the city received a congestion mitigation and air quality grant to pay 80% of that project cost on that, for that project.
And are we seeing any increased interest now that the city of Overland Park just passed or maybe it was Johnson County, passed
was-
a very comprehensive bike and hike
Yeah,
plan?
that was over the city of Overland Park with 165 miles of bike lane. The city of Kansas City, Missouri, also the council passed a policy directing staff to look at 4-lane roadways to do an analysis of converting those to 3-lane roadways with bike lanes. And they've got 2, possibly 3 pilot projects, one of which is Grand Avenue through downtown Kansas City, converting it from 4 lanes to 3 lanes with bike lanes. So that'll be a pretty dramatic change if you're in the downtown Kansas City, Missouri area.
Won't that compete with the rail car?
It actually will it won't compete, it will tie into it. Yeah, it's perfect. They also, our Highway 350 trail, which was a part of that project you just saw for Quick Trip, which will extend from Blue Ridge to Maple. We received comments on the design from Missouri DOT about 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks ago. The engineering firm is working on those, and if they may have already submitted those back to the Missouri DOT, or will be doing that within the next few weeks, if not more quickly than that even. And once they approve, and those changes are pretty minor, so we anticipate that'll be a quick turnaround. We'll be going out for bid on that project. Not sure when that construction will start. That will all depend on the contractor selected and their time frame. But hopefully this fall or late summer on that. The streetscape project for downtown, which is on 63rd Street between Raytown Road and Blue Ridge Boulevard, same exact thing. We got comments back from Missouri DOT. We're making some changes. Those have been resubmitted last week to the Missouri DOT for their further review of those changes they've requested, and then we plan to go out for bid on that this summer as well. Again, we don't know when the construction, it could be this year, it could be next spring, just depending on the contractor's scheduling and getting, and hopefully the bids come in no higher than the estimated bid, because that was the problem last time on that project, as well as the Highway 350 trail. We're also designing, working with engineer on design of sidewalks along the south side of 59th Street from Raytown Central Middle School east to Woodson Avenue. And those, again, those will be submitted, should be complete here in the next 4 to 8 weeks, and then submitted to Missouri DOT for their review and approval. And we have all those projects, we have grant funds. I've obtained grants for to 80% of the cost for construction. And then we have a contract with a planning consultant that you may see just from a staffing workload standpoint on, we have not brought him in to review any plans, but larger projects such as like a Quick Trip or something along that magnitude in the future, we may outsource our plan review in the staff report. So to a consultant, his name is Ron Williamson, to do the review, draft the staff report, still working with staff, but kind of doing the actual work, if you will. And so he may be you may see him at future meetings, and it will just depend on our workload and the scale of projects. So if it's smaller projects like the conditional use permits that were before you tonight, we probably won't have him review those unless it's just a real heavy workload. But it's more time consuming type projects that we'll probably bring him in on. So I think that's all I got, unless you have questions on anything on those projects or something else I haven't talked about. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. R&R.
Through that process several times, rejected some things, and even took tear down the building and let you that trailer thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and they opened up, I believe, I haven't been by there in the last week, but I believe they opened up last Saturday, I believe, if I remember correctly, and the business owner / property owner there has been very, very easy, or very good to work with, and has not caused any problems, and has done everything we've asked him to do, and even other things we haven't asked him to do. One other thing, another project. We've had a meeting today with the Missouri DOT, we being Jim Melvin, our Public Works Director, and myself, another grant that the city has obtained of looking to make improvements to Raytown Road and Highway 350 intersections, both eastbound and westbound. There will be a public meeting later this year, probably sometime in August. They're finalizing the design plans for that to improve those intersections, the functionality of those intersections. And so there'll be some changes to some little things, some bigger things, just depends on your viewpoint and your level of importance of what's important to you and on there. But at those intersections that, and I'll make you aware when the public meeting is. So like I said, it'll be sometime in August. So the construction for that project is online to occur next year. So that'll be a 2016 project. The corridor plan, this is an implementation of that plan, or it's implementing a portion of that plan. That plan identified or recommended I don't want to say it recommended moving or realigning the westbound lanes, but it recommended looking at the potential to realign. This project looked at that. They did an economic analysis of what would be the potential economic benefit from a retail sales tax standpoint, redevelopment standpoint, property tax standpoint, if the westbound lanes were realigned onto the same alignment as the eastbound lanes on the portion in Raytown from basically in front of Dick Smith Ford east to Sterling, or just west of Sterling. There was a positive benefit to doing that. but it was a very small benefit, and it did not justify the cost of the magnitude of that cost. That would be a very, very large or costly project, and so the benefit wasn't great enough to justify that. So the alignment will stay the same as it is today. And now that that question's been answered, now they're designing and figuring out how to improve the intersection at Raytown Road and 350, because particularly at westbound 350, if the alignment was going to move, totally changes that intersection in the down the road. So now they know things, how to deal with both, or that they need to deal with both. Having said that, for those of you that live on 75th Street, west of Raytown Road, that plan also, and the redevelopment around the IHOP area, 75th Street between westbound 350 and Raytown Road is identified to be vacated and will become a private drive within that development. The signal at 75th Street and westbound 350 is going to go away. The median down Raytown Road between westbound and eastbound 350 is going to be extended, so there will be no more left turns onto where 75th Street is down at some point next year. That's part of that project. The left turn movement from eastbound 350 to northbound Raytown Road is what's being looked at, of how to deal with that. And that's probably the hardest nut to crack in that, in making those improvements. It potentially will go away where you won't make a left turn onto northbound Raytown Road. And so there'll be signage to redirect cars of how to get to northbound Raytown Road, such as before Gregory, to turn at Gregory to go over to Raytown Road, or go past Raytown Road to Walmart, to the signal at Walmart, come across and come back on westbound 350. So yes, they're putting in sidewalks. The trail that goes along the south side of eastbound 350, they're accommodating that. I don't know to the extent, if any, that trail will actually be built as part of this, but they're taking that into account to allow for it to come through the intersection. And there's an alternative that could allow for that trail to turn, or a link to that trail to turn and go down Raytown Road down to 76 Terrace, and where the side across the frontage of those businesses and then potentially and then ties into that neighborhood or provides access, and then there's sidewalk down there. So as well as some potential wider medians, which could then be enhanced with landscaping and other things. So there's a lot of opportunities and changes, but those in turn can create some opportunities. So again, that'll be August. Between now and August, those things will start to be or become more clear in what those are. There's a lot of variations right now that are being looked at, seeing what works traffic wise and what fits in access to businesses and that type of stuff. U-Haul, not rent, not Hearst or Hertz, U-Haul, right? Yeah, it's there. Yep. Yeah, it's right behind the convenience store, between the convenience store and Super Splash, across from the car wash. Yeah, maybe all their trucks were rented. Because I will tell you this, if the trucks are not there, it is easy to miss. There is a sign on the orangish brick building. They have a sign up on the top part, but it doesn't face Raytown Road. It faces 53rd Place. So if the trucks are not there, the trucks draws your attention to it. But if they're rented out, and that's good for their business if they are rented out. So yeah, we were just down there. In fact, one of the conditions of that approval was thinning out the tree line between them and Super Splash, and that just occurred earlier this week. So
any other questions? I've got one more comment, I guess. Budget season will be upon us by the time we meet again.
We'll be starting in July.
July, okay. Any considerations for a comprehensive plan? redo, rework, rip and replace?
We could look at that. That's a costly item, like 150,000 type cost to do a total update. It's a big price tag to that, but yeah, it does need to be done. So,
That price seems to have jumped considerably.
I think he does.
yeah, I very well could be.
I'm sure with the soft copy and some 8-hour days over the weekends, this commission could
The
do a great deal of work.
You
pro
could.
bono.
You could. The thing with the comprehensive plan, one of the key components of that is the public input, and it can't be just 1 or 2 meetings. It's extensive and all over town, and it's very time consuming in that to get the public input on that, and then the stuff you're thinking of, as well as traffic analysis and that other stuff. And now the Parks Department they're updating their park master plan right now as well. So that in effect would become a component of the comprehensive plan when it's done. The other part is the city's been involved with Communities for All Ages through Mid-America Regional Council. And actually, I need to schedule a presentation on that for a planning commission meeting to bring you guys further up to speed. I've talked a little bit about that in the past, but things have progressed where it's much more clear on what that involves or can involve.
Okay. I see we have a meeting scheduled for June 4th. Do we have any applications
I don't.
circulating?
As of right now, there's no applications for that. When we did the training session a few months ago, we talked about at the end of that training session of doing further training or a discussion on the comprehensive plan, the Highway 350 corridor plan, and Central Business District plan, some of that stuff. If you would like, we could plan for that on June 4th.
You know, I'm a big proponent of recurring training. I think that all of us need to hear it, and some of us may not have heard it yet. So if you could put something together for a couple hours, would that be objectionable?
I won't be able to get through all 3 of those pieces all in one night. We could, but it'll take more than 2 hours. But definitely could get through parts of those. So
Yeah, I think 2 hours would probably be about right.
Yeah.
And would anybody be opposed to starting a half hour early? Maybe an hour early? Is that the next meeting, June 4th, if there's no applications?
would you be? But, and that raises a good question. July 2nd is your July Planning Commission meeting date. Is that going to be a good date? July 2nd, 2 nights before a holiday weekend?
That's going to work.
Yeah. That was kind of what I'm assuming, so maybe, would you be back by July 9th? Okay. Because we will plan for the July Planning Commission meeting, assuming we have applications for July 9th. Okay. And I don't know that you'll have a meeting in July, but if we don't have applications, we could do some training in June. If it's training, we can look at a different date in July than the 9th as well, so if that works for you guys.
Well, why don't we go ahead and task you with putting something together for a couple hours and start at 6:30? And
That's an easy task because I've got those presentations done from a few years ago, and it's nothing that's really changed. Updating maybe a little bit here and there, but not a lot.
okay. And the new Jack Stack's open. We'd be happy to sample that during training.
That's not a Raytown business, though.
Jimmy John's work, yeah.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay, well, hey, everybody, thank you for a focused evening. At this time, look for a motion to adjourn the meeting. So move, second. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Good night.